Juan Soto has just signed a 15-year deal worth $765 million to play for the New York Mets next season. And this deal is set to be the largest amount of total money in a single contract in MLB history, surpassing the $700 million deal that Shohei Ohtani signed with the Dodgers just a year ago. And Juan Soto deserves every penny of it, because there wasn't just one team out there who felt that Juan Soto's worth sat at around $1 billion. There were two. And in this massive bidding war, on one side we have the New York Mets, who ended up landing Juan Soto. And on the other side, we have their crosstown rival and Juan Soto's former team in the New York Yankees. And if the rumors circulating this story are said to be true, then it's believed in a last-ditch effort to sign Juan Soto, the Yankees went out and threw him an offer worth 16 years, $760 million. And Juan Soto's agent, Scott Boras, went to the Mets with this deal, and the Mets said that they can cut a year off that contract and add $5 million more to the total, meaning that if Juan Soto were to sign with the Mets, he would be making an average of $3.5 million more every year for the next decade and a half. And that's why we will be seeing Juan Soto play for the New York Mets this season. And it was also believed that New York Mets owner Steve Cohen was willing to go above and beyond $800 million to guarantee that this deal happens. And that right there should be enough to show you how much more committed the New York Mets were to signing Juan Soto compared to the Yankees. In fact, agent Scott Boras went back to the Yankees hoping that they would counteroffer. But New York Yankees ownership felt like a line had to be drawn somewhere, and that line was at $760 million. Now, some will say that the only reason that Juan Soto picked the Mets over the Yankees was because of money. And while that did play a large role in things, it wasn't the sole reason. In fact, if you look at reports coming from Jeff Passan, it said that Juan Soto looked at the future of both the Mets and the Yankees and felt like the Mets had a brighter future. And this man has to think long term here, because both deals were going to go for 15 years plus, and he believes that in the long run, the Mets will have more success, which is why he signed with them. He also thinks that Steve Cohen isn't done spending yet. And that's probably true, because Juan Soto wasn't the only major signing that the Mets have made so far. They've made some additions to their bullpen and starting rotation, and we'll talk more about that in a second. But for right now, I just want to remind you guys to slow down, like the video, and subscribe to the channel. Every subscription is greatly appreciated. We're on the road to 5,000, and I would do anything if you subscribe. Alright, now let's get to some of these major signings that the New York Mets made before they acquired Juan Soto, with the first one being Frankie Montas, a starting pitcher, and a great one at that. However, he has struggled to find a consistent home and consistent play since being traded from the Oakland A's nearly 2 years ago. And as an A's fan, I know all about Frankie Montas' lore. I know that the only reason he ended up in Oakland was because he got traded from the Los Angeles Dodgers for Rich Hill and Josh Reddick. And at the time, it felt like a huge loss for the A's. But with the way that Frankie Montas played in his 6 years in Oakland, it felt like, okay, maybe the deal wasn't so bad. I mean, Frankie Montas really peaked in his latter years in Oakland. In 2021, he had a career year and ended up 6th in Cy Young voting. He went out and started 32 games for the A's, the most he's ever had in his entire career, and he ended up having a 3.37 ERA, while also being the Oakland A's ace at only 28 years old. And although there was still plenty more left in the tank for Montas, the A's were clearly heading into a rebuild and were looking to move away from their superstar. And so after a few rough stints, Montas found himself with the Milwaukee Brewers at the end of last season. And during his time with the Brewers, he did see some growth because his ERA was down, his walks per 9 innings were down, while his strikeout ratio was up, and he was even able to go out and gather himself a few wins, which I'm sure boosted his confidence. And there was enough little bit of improvement there that the Mets decided to take a chance on Montas and give him a 2-year deal worth $34 million. And in this market, I think that is an absolute steal. You pay Montas $17 million per year over these next 2 years, and the second year is a player option, so there's no long-term commitment being made here. And I feel like this deal had to happen for the Mets because while they did have some breakout pitchers for them last season in Jose Quintana, Luis Severino, and Sean Manaea, I mean, all of these guys were becoming free agents. In fact, the Mets already lost Luis Severino in free agency, so signing Frankie Montas was a must and something that just needed to happen. And this brings us to the Mets' second biggest signing this year. With that being said, I'd have to say that there's a bit of a trend occurring because their next big signing was Clay Holmes, who just so happened to be coming from the New York Yankees. It's clear that Steve Cohen is a petty man. I mean, if you can't beat the best team in New York, you become the best team in New York. And you do that by stealing the other New York team's players, with one of them being Clay Holmes. Now, ever since joining the Yankees in 2021, Clay Holmes has been phenomenal. In fact, over the past 3 full seasons, Clay Holmes has started in over 180 games. That means he's played in 60 plus games per year, which is just a huge amount. And he's also been able to rack in a total of 74 saves. Talk about being clutch. In fact, that's exactly what this New York Mets pitching staff needed, someone who was clutch. Maybe if they had Clay Holmes in last year's playoff run, they wouldn't have gotten beat by the Dodgers, who knows. But anyway, Clay Holmes' deal is pretty much structured the same way Montas is. He gets a $36 million deal over the course of 3 years, with the first half of the deal being 2 years where he gets $13 million each year, and his third year being a $12 million player option. So again, no long-term commitment being made here, and of course you have to remember, they are paying Juan Soto a shit ton of money, so these other guys are going to be on cheaper deals. And they get this guy on an absolute steal. I feel like Clay Holmes is a stud. I mean, he's gotten 2 All-Star appearances in the last couple of years, and it's because his pitching is otherworldly. I mean, he goes out and pitches 60 plus innings a year as a reliever and has been consistent time and time again. How the Yankees let him fall in free agency, I have no idea. But the Mets getting not only Juan Soto, but Clay Holmes and Frankie Montas is what they need if they want to win a World Series. And we've seen the Mets fail when they've gone out and made big splashes. But I think this time is different, especially because the core is already in place and they already know what it takes to win. Unlike the time they went out and got Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander. That was a huge failure, and I think one we could have seen coming from a mile away. But I think this time is different, especially when you have a guy like Juan Soto on the roster. Talk about a proven winner. This guy has already gone out and got himself a World Series. He did that 2 years into the big leagues. And during his first 4.5 seasons with the Washington Nationals, he was a stud. I mean, he was nearly Rookie of the Year, and every year after that, he has been in MVP convos. He was a 3-time Silver Slugger while playing for the Nationals, as well as making 2 All-Star appearances. In fact, I don't think many people even consider the fact that this man is basically an Iron Man. If we exclude the COVID year, he averages about 150 games per season. Talk about someone who's reliable and dependable, something that I think has been lacking in the major leagues recently, because a lot of guys are coming out with injuries year after year after year, but now Juan Soto, this is a man who can stay healthy. Maybe he needs to talk to Mike Trout, because Mike Trout could use some tips and pointers on how to last a full season. But anyway, I think when he really made his name for himself was during that COVID season. Of course, the games were a lot less, so his batting average, his slugging percentage, his OPS was all really high. But that doesn't take away from the fact that he played phenomenal that season. And we got less Juan Soto because of COVID. But anyway, in the first 4.5 years, what I'm trying to say is that he was great for the Nationals. And it's not like his play fell off while playing for the San Diego Padres, because he also did have some pretty good years there. It just didn't really work out long term, and he wanted that bag, which is why he ended up going to the Yankees. He signed a 1-year, $31 million deal, and he thought he was going to get his second ring. He didn't. I mean, he got really close. They made the World Series, and they wouldn't have made it that great of a playoff run if Juan Soto wasn't on the team. But he really wanted that bag. You have to remember, Juan Soto puts money above everything else, and I don't blame him for that, which is why he's now on the New York Mets. And was this an overpay? I don't think so. I mean, there is no salary cap in baseball, and if Steve Cohen wants to go out and give the guy $51 million a year, then hell, how can you say that's an overpay? This guy has got infinite money. If he's able to fill the roster out with great players, even just solid players around Juan Soto, then it's not really like they're losing out on anything. Steve Cohen is a billionaire, and if he wants to make Juan Soto a billionaire too, I say go for it, as long as this doesn't hurt the team in the long run, and I don't think it will. But anyway, I think I've said everything I've wanted to about this signing, so I'm just going to end it here. And if there are any other big moves that happen in free agency, I'm going to talk about it. So I'll see you when that happens. But anyway, catch y'all later. Much love. Deuces.